Call the Port of Newport Commission work session meeting on Thursday the 28th to order. First item on the agenda is a presentation from SDAO. We'll take them individually, but let's start out just in the order here, maybe unless you have a preference.
I haven't seen the order, so.
We'll talk about the process for a general manager search, what a proposal for that might look like, and in particular, your thoughts on how you engage the board in that search. And then after that, we can talk about some options for interim general managers that you might have to provide to us, and then briefly spend a few minutes talking about any recommended board training that you might have that your group may be able to offer us as we get together as a relatively new board.
Okay. Well, first of all, most of you bet I'm George Dunkel with Special District Association of Oregon. I run the consulting services program, which that's what's there. Don't tear it up, Aaron. Be nice. Run the consulting services program. One of the things we do in consulting services is we provide training, mainly to elected officials and to staff. Various things. I do a lot of board roles, responsibility type training. I think Jeff's had the class, and the rest of you may have. There's also a DVD with me on it out there. I don't recommend you watch it, but anyway. I mean, it is good, but it's, me when I had hair. We do that. The other thing we do is we do help districts, a variety of districts, and we've helped Port of Newport in the past with the hiring and recruitment and hiring of a general manager. We currently have one going on with the Port of Morrill right now, and we're just finishing up a position with Depot Bay Fire, not for their chief's position, but for the chief's position. So we have experience. We have part-time consultants that work with us. They're retirees. People like, I'll give you an example, people like Don Mann. Don worked here for years. He's a guy that we tap once in a while to go out and work with small ports. He currently is doing some work for Cascade Locks. And he's not really on our payroll right now. Our payroll is turn on, turn off with our digital health part-time people. But that just to give you an example of who those folks are. And of course, when there's any stress in an organization, a lot of times we get called. We help with the pre-loss legal program, and we just help with general coaching and mentoring of general managers and board members. My experience, I come out of the fire service. I spent 28 years in fire service. The last 10 years when I was in fire service, I was a chief officer and served on the board of directors for SDAO, which if you know much about SDAO, it's made up of 900 members from around the state, which are people like you. And a member is a district, not an individual. So you can kind of go 900 times 5 and think about how many people actually belong to the organization. We're here today to visit with you about the three things that you asked me to come for, and I came prepared to do that. And the thing I want to share with you first of all, I'm really happy to see that Jim's on board. Have a 5-person board, commission. You can make, get working together and get on down the road. We've worked with Aaron and Karen before. You've got some good staff members to rely on as you work through this process. Back in 2013, we helped you hire, ended up being Kevin Greenwood. Joanne, Walter was involved in that, but Joanne took a very strong leadership role in that, so we modeled that process around some of her style. We learned from that, and we've continued to refine the type of program process that we recommend to folks like you. And I've got a little bit of an outline here that I want to go over with you. You may have seen this. We'll kind of wait. I'll flip through these pages with you. You won't have to read them line by line, but they'll be there for you to reference later. You're welcome to look at one, and I got one for staff. There's three key areas that the Commission needs to address in a regular or special meeting in the near future when it comes to the hiring process. And the first one is you need to take a look at your current job description for the position. Is the title right? Are the duties right? essential, the types of skills and knowledge that's laid out in there, is that still appropriate today? Or, with the new board commission, do you want to look at that differently? So that's really important that you do that you get staff to drag that out, and you review it, you come to a meeting, and you either say, it's fine, here's our job description, or we want to make these changes. And you take input on that in a regular or special meeting on that job description. And that's really key that you get that done, the next 30 days, would be my suggestion. And the second part then, once you're done with that, you kind of go, okay, this is what our general manager, I'm sorry, you call executive director general manager. I'm working with the Port of Laurel, and they started off with it being the general manager, and they changed it to executive director in the middle of the process. So that's why it's a little fouled up. But anyway, it's important to get that done. But as you're working on that, and when you're completed, you also want to think of, and I use the term value. What's the value of the position based on the size of your budget, the size of your operation? Is the salary range that's currently laid out for that position, is it appropriate going forward? And if it is, does it match the job description? For example, if you've got a $50,000 salary and you're asking for a PhD, it may not match. Does that make sense what I'm saying there? And I'm using broad areas so that you get my point, okay? But you got to look at your budget, you got to look at your operation, and make sure that range is where you need it. Again, that range needs to be discussed and approved in a meeting, okay? And the third thing that needs to be discussed and approved in a meeting is the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the process that you want to use to recruit candidates, hire candidates, or screen them, and then the hiring process. All right. So that's really what this whole first page says, okay? If you take a look at the second page, it talks about things that we would do to help you. And we'll meet with you today, help you update your job description, look at your benefit, look at a selection process. And a selection process that we used last time for the Port of Laurel, and I'm doing this from memory, but it looks Port of Newport, looks something like this. The commission put together a hiring team, or a hiring panel. I can't remember, not committee, what they call them. You remember, Judy? I can't remember, hiring something. Anyway.
I think it was hiring committee.
Committee, yeah. It was made up of a couple commissioners and some other representatives. They worked closely with me. And we received the letters of introduction and resumes at our office. And the reason we recommend you do that is you want the early stages, you want to be very confidential in your recruiting process and who applies. Because you're probably going to attract sitting managers. And they generally they may not want their current employer to know that they're seeking employment someplace else. So the first part of the process is very confidential. We recommend that you have those things either emailed or sent to us. We get them, we bind them up. After it closes, you'll be presented, you or your hiring committee, whichever you choose to do, will be presented with a binder that'll have all the applicants and a rating done by us. This is simply kind of a pass-fail. We don't rate them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's really a pass-fail based on your job description.
So whether they meet the minimum qualifications.
Do they meet the minimum qualifications? Are they the type of person that you said you're looking for by the job description? Okay. But we give them all to you. And the reason we give them all to you with some type of approval form, or you might say a ranking form, is because there could be something, let's say it's a local candidate. You may know something about the candidate that's really not in the deal, which makes that person more attractive to you than it would to us. Kind of makes sense? So you get to see them all. You'll be asked individually. Again, this is a process that we normally use. I'm not dictating this to you. I'm just giving it as an example. You'll then be asked individually, either the commission or the hiring committee, to screen them yourself. We have a matrix that we have you work through, and you'll go through those. Okay. We'll then bring you together and do a consensus exercise, which will allow the candidates that have been kind of confidentially selected to rise to the top. At that point, we could end up with anywhere from 5 to 10 12 people that rise, kind of the cream that rises. Then you have a choice of doing some phone interviews to screen that down more, or to do some background stuff to screen that down more. It's kind of what you feel is important to happen at that point. We like you to get to 5.
Would you be assisting in that process
Yes,
as well?
every one of these steps,
Okay.
either I or one of the other consultants, we have an advantage right now compared to we didn't have in 2013. One of our part-time people lives in Seal Rock, and he's very capable of helping us with this. So if I couldn't get here, he could come and fill in, and he'll be kept up to speed on this whole thing. If, in fact, we didn't do it. So he couldn't be here today because of the doctor's appointment, but he's helped us before.
George, you bring your own legal team also. You do.
Right. Our process, in fact, we are doing a review of some of our processes right now because of the changes or the re-emphasis of the veterans preference. So we're having a legal team take a look at that and make sure that we're doing those things appropriately. And yes, we do.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Now, there is a point in the process where we'll want to involve your legal counsel, and that's when it gets to the final candidate or two when you're talking a contract. We feel that really needs to be something handled by you with our assistance and your legal assistance, not our attorneys.
Okay.
Yours, the districts. Okay. We've run into some things with some other districts when we didn't involve their legal team, because then we got it all done and they go, oh, gee, we want our legal counsel to look at this, and then they find stuff, and I think it's because they weren't involved in the front end. You know what I mean? So we'll get them involved. So yeah, Stuart, Walter, that's where that is. So once then you get it to 5, here's a decision that we'll ask you to make up front, but I'm trying to tell you where it would fit in. And that is, how do you want to do the interviews? Do you want a type of an assessment lab where these people will be put through 4 or 5 or 3 to 5 scenario-driven things and they'd be observed by evaluators? Or what we did last time, and what we found to be successful with these types of positions, they were basically 3 interview panels of 5 people. A panel made up of what we would call the more technical things that deal with your port, maybe representatives of the fishing industry, representative, what is the Port of Newport, and who are your stakeholders? You can't go out and tap 20 of them, but who would represent some of those stakeholders? When you take a look at your job description, what the expectations are of your general manager, who do they interact with? And that would give you a panel of people then would give you some input. Okay, they would do an interview. Another panel might be the community-based, rather than the technical part of the port, the more community-based part of the port, the president of the Kiwanis Club or whatever, may make up what is the arenas we have an expectation that our general manager might work in, and what's their thoughts. And the third one, I'm not leaving out the commission, you guys get to interview, okay? The third one might be some involvement of your staff, okay? We have found that taking 2 to 3 staff members and have them do a more social type of interaction, not formal interviews, but for example, give a tour of your facilities. A couple of your people take the candidates individually and just give you feedback on what kind of questions they ask. Did they come across, as friendly and concerned about the port, or did they come across as, I'm going to be the general manager, you're going to be my subordinate? We found out to get some real insight into some candidates. And plus, it involves your staff at a level where they're not making the decision who the general manager is going to be, but they're giving you some data to pile into your decision-making process. So that's kind of the 3 panels we see. And of course, the final one would be, and the commission would make a decision what they want to do, whether they want to interview all 5 of the finalists, or whether they want that group earlier to reach consensus and narrow it down to 2 or 3, and you only interview the top 2 or 3. That would be a decision by you. We would help you with the questions, both for all the panels and for the board, for the commission. We'd make sure those are appropriate questions and that pass the straight face test when it comes to discrimination or anything like that. We'll brief everybody the day of the process. Everybody will get briefed on what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. You will need help from you and staff on who those people may be that you want to involve. So that's the process kind of outlined roughly that we've been using, and we're using it right now with the Port of Morrow. And we found that to be pretty successful. It's a variation of what we did here before. Okay. Now, one thing about the commission and the role, the job of hiring your CEO, you have extreme latitude. You can basically say, if you 5 agree to it, or three of you agree in a meeting, look, George, you bring us 20 candidates, we're going to interview them all ourselves. Thank you. You know, good luck. But, you know, you have that kind of latitude. I mean, you basically can say, this is how we want to do it. You don't even have to run a big recruitment. You can turn, and if you've got an internal person that you think is ready to step up, you can negotiate with that person and appoint them. I mean, you have that kind of latitude. Now, we don't recommend some of those things because we think they complicate your life and they cause, even, for example, Aaron, if I may pick on you, let's say Aaron's ready to move up, okay? You may believe he is. It's in Aaron's best interest that he sees some competition because then it validates him to everybody down the road. They can't just say, well, you know, those commissioners went up and had some rogue beer and pointed Aaron. See what I'm saying? I mean, there's some back, you know, it kind of eliminates all that backroom politics and brings it out and makes it more transparent. One of the things I do want to caution you about, when you take a look at your job description and you think it needs to be changed or, you know, for whatever reason, make sure that you run that through your staff and that people and members of the public get a chance to comment on that. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to make it so that it discriminates against somebody and you didn't even realize it. You know, you really thought, I worked for you, and you really thought, hey, you know, George would be a great candidate, but we want a master's degree, and I can't even apply because I don't know a master's. So some of those things, when you get into those higher things that you'd like to see, you may want to put preferred, not required, you know, so that you get a pool of candidates that come forward. All right, that's kind of, and then after the interviews, you would then come out into a regular meeting and make an announcement, you know, through a motion in a second that you want to make a contingent offer to somebody. You'd want to make that contingent upon some 2 or 3 things, you know, a contract, maybe some kind of a medical evaluation, maybe some kind of a more thorough background check. I mean, I've had commissioners that want to go and visit their other work site. You know, you can do that at that point because it says between you and that final candidate. And then we go into negotiations and see what we can land the person.
Great. Anybody have questions at this point on that process? Jeff?
Kind of, I don't know. Kind of, I guess.
Yeah.
Go, Jeff.
I guess my main concern is, you know, we can be as thorough with the interview process and the job description and have all these interview panels, and somebody may be really good at interviews, but it doesn't get at some of the core competencies that we have no way of knowing unless the best way we have of knowing is to talk to people that they've worked with, people in their community, people they work with, or people work for them. I mean, I know that it's really a complicated thing to do, but it's something I wish we would have had and heard that in the past it would have been beneficial to have more knowledge of that person in their environment rather than just in the interview process. How can we get more of that type of information during the process?
Well, we're hopeful that when we use the 3-phase approach, that personality tendencies will rise, because it's really hard for a person to come in here at 8 o'clock in the morning, go through 3 interviews of some degree, and hold a fake approach all day. And so we find that, and I'm not trying to encourage you about staff, but we find that with the staff, we pick up some stuff that doesn't get picked up in interviews. And we shield the staff because we don't want the staff to pick the general manager. Okay? But, because we think it's in their best interest that they don't. Okay? But on the other hand, they may have that person in the car in a little different environment. As an example, we did one over in Central Oregon, and they took an individual out for a tour of some facilities, and they never asked any questions about the people in the car. It was all telling them about them, and not really asking about the district, or, hey Jeff, tell me a little bit about your family, which says something about a person. Okay? We took that data, we didn't make a decision based on that comment from that staff, but we took that data and started asking some questions. We revisited some references, and we found some stuff out. But because of the cue, we got from a staff member. Not because the staff members didn't say don't hire him. Staff members said this was weird, and I went, that is weird. Let's look into that. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, there is another thing we can do, and we've done this in a couple of things. One is we've done what's called a budget lab. Depending on where your 5 candidates are, let's say that you end up with 5 candidates and maybe only one of them has any experience with Oregon budget law. Okay? We'll ask you to add a budget lab. One of our people sit down with them and go over a basic budget and to see what they know about public budgeting. And that isn't a hire or no hire. That is a knowledge for the commission. Okay, your top 2 candidates, neither one of them have any budget development skills. You want to hire one of them, you can do that, but day one, you get them in a budget class. See what I mean? It doesn't eliminate the candidate, it gives you a clue. Okay, there's something we need for them to work on, and in negotiations, you share it with them up front. Same thing with, now this could be a deal breaker. We offer a human resources lab where we bring in 2 or 3 HR professionals to kind of drill them on current HR stuff. Well, I can't even give you acronyms, but anyway, do they understand Family Medical Leave Act? Do they understand some things that are out there that staff has to deal with, and general manager needs to not even know the guts of it, but needs to know it's there and it's something that they're responsible for. So that helps in some of that area.
Okay, let me give you that's helpful. Well, let me give you an example and ask for what you would recommend. Let's say we get down to 5, 3 candidates, whatever, and we want to talk. Let's say somebody's a court general manager, somebody's runs an insurance company, or whatever. Because I'm just picking something off the top of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can somebody from your office or our office or call somebody that works with them, or call a member of the community that interacts with that board that they work for or did work for? And how does that process work? I'm just not familiar with it.
We've done it a couple of ways. I've actually had commissioners that had access to a small plane. 2 commissioners went off and said, George, we're going to go visit this. And we gave them some information, said, okay, don't do this, but go forth, young man. Yeah. And they went and did it. Okay.
See, I don't know what's appropriate or not. I have no idea. I have not been involved in that.
What you're talking about doing that, you'll have the permission of the person to do it. See, you can't just,
But we have your guidance on, I guess, to Jeff's point here. What we're talking about is we don't want to get into trouble doing it, but again, Jeff wants, and I think we all sort of feel a little bit of the same way, that we want to be a little more evasive into the personal aspects of how things might flow in the guy's or gal's current position. It's almost like a deeper dive into a reference check, but with another component. And it sounds like your group would be able to keep us on the straight and narrow
Absolutely.
to work out a system by which we could accomplish that.
Okay.
So,
And because when you get to the contingent offer phase, we get them to, of course, sign off on a bunch of stuff, for background. And we're frankly, all that confidentiality we had leading up to that, we tell them 2 days before, okay, you show up for these interviews, all the confidentiality is out the door except for your personal information, where you work, what your name is, maybe even your home address is going to get exposed. And we tell them that, because if they don't like that, then don't show up. Okay? So then that gives you more odds of work. Initially, we keep it pretty, basically nobody sees the apps but my assistant and me until we bring them to you in an executive session.
So that when, what part of the process, what Jeff was talking about, would occur when we're down to the 2 or 5 or 3? Or when we're down
We're down to 5. We pretty much, the local press is going to request, and we really have difficulty in holding back that information once you're down to 5. We can hold it back up to there. We can, they push us, we can go lawyer to lawyer with them and hold it back. But once we get to 5 and most people are getting invited for interviews, it's public. And it should be.
and that's when we would be able to do a deeper dive into
Yes. Yeah. Now, there's some dive that's done before you get there. We're not going to bring you a candidate. We take a look at your community and your port, and we know some of you, we know a lot about you. We take a look at it. We're not going to bring you a candidate that's going to add to your stress.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, we could get surprised, that happens, but
Yeah.
generally we're going to do what we can do up front as we get them. Joe Smith. Who's Joe Smith? Oh, Joe Smith. Okay, he works here. I can call somebody, what do you know about Joe Smith? Generally. Okay. Once in a while, we get to the 5 and we're going, uh-oh, and we have to scramble because something pops up we can catch. But generally that doesn't happen.
So before they get to us, George, all the background checks that are given on their resume, or that's all kind of
All that's verified.
That's all verified before it ever gets to us,
Yeah.
and we would have questions about talking with their existing employer, maybe someone that wasn't referenced.
You would, once you got to 5, well, once you got to 2 or 3,
2 or 3,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because now we're talking to them one-on-one about, because see, there's 2 phases, well, actually more phases than that, but when you get to the end, everything leading up to the end is you looking at them, are they a fit? And then it switches. Now they got to go, whoa, are they a fit for me? And when it gets to that, now we get to really play the game. Because now George is going, whoa, I thought Port of Newport was, I thought I was in the middle of Florida. What the hell did I get myself into here?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be light about it. So you gotta be prepared for that too, and I'll be the first one that will tell them, okay, the commission feels real strong about you. How do you feel about them? And them meaning the district, not you individually necessarily.
any other thoughts, questions?
Sounds good.
Jeff? Good? Walter? Well, so I guess if we stuck with this search as far as questions going on here, I would think that one of our first steps is internally, based on your feedback, but I think what's important to us here is that maybe we could have Karen send the board the recent copy of the PD that we have. And then I would say people need to take a peek at that, and we should start thinking about things that we'd want to add to that, or remove from it, or clarify. Because to George's point, I think from my perspective, one of the most important things I see also is those minimum qualifications. Allow us to not waste anybody else's time and protect us a little bit from getting a group that's so diverse that, it's not practical. But nonetheless, I envision a process by which Karen can send this to us. We can sort of put together our comments, maybe even send them to Karen by a certain date, and then we'll get back together again in a work session for Karen to present, here's everything everybody suggested. Now let's sort of more openly go through and talk through why people wanted what, with the end result being a completed PD at the end of the work session.
Could I add something to that, Stuart?
Sure.
Send it to your senior staff.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we would do in that would be, I'd rely on Aaron to circulate it to anyone, the staff if you want, but those comments would go through you and then you could simply list them, if you will, as here's some considerations from staff. And then we would take that, or you would be part of that work session. And I'm thinking out loud here, guys, so jump in. But I would envision you bringing that and saying, well, here's some of the things that the port staff came up with, in much the same way that each of the commissioners would have their own take on it.
Okay, don't forget this step. Don't forget this step. When you finally get it on your agenda, and you have, the draft that you guys manipulated, which is perfect, okay? Remember that you get the step where you get to ask, has everybody in the audience had a chance to see it?
No question. I mean, the work session would be an open forum too.
Because
but I'd say on that note, though, I want the board and everyone to do their homework as well.
Absolutely.
First, I think it's incumbent on us before we throw things out with a blank canvas. I think our priorities need to be pretty well established as well, and then they can be added to those.
But I wanted to clarify why I brought this up.
Sure.
By doing that, by getting that input from the public and doing it in your session, whatever session you want to call it, then when you get to the end, we get to do those interviews in executive session. If you don't do that, then they get to come. And that makes for very uncomfortable for everybody.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I certainly do want input from the public on some of this
Absolutely.
as well.
But I just want to clarify
Yeah.
that that's,
Yeah. Well,
So the only thing I'd suggest is we should add the 2013 job description also, so we have something to go by.
yeah, I was just going to walk this over to Karen. She may have this, or Aaron may have this on, I'm sure it's a Word document somewhere. But this is what I have from 2013. And again, I'm not being critical. I'm just sharing with you. Joanne pushed for these KSAs. That's really not part of the job description, but it's something you should read. And if you want to include them, but make sure you read them.
KSAs being
Knowledge, skills, and abilities. There was a list of, how many here?
So, I mean, I guess to that end, I think that's probably a good suggestion in terms of perspective for everybody. The last PD and the one from 13, send them out to the board, and our next meeting will be a series of items as I'm envisioning. Hopefully we'll ultimately at that point we'll be able to more effectively discuss interim general manager options. But I think we could, in the interest of not having too many meetings, maybe by that point we'll also be able to more effectively talk about the PD as well, so we can do a dual function of the next meeting, if that jives. I mean, obviously we got to keep it moving, this process, so we get it soaking.
So George, do you have any kind of, have you looked at our current job description?
I glanced at the 2013 one. It's the only one I have.
Yeah.
So what changes you may have made in 16, 17, I don't have.
It seems as though just our last go around, it boiled down to a couple of the preferred as opposed to required. It seemed to be the
That's generally just to give you an example of the big debate we had in Port of Morrow, was academic requirements versus preferred, required versus preferred, and residency was a big issue up there.
Where is that for?
It's Borden.
Oh, okay.
It's the third or second most economic driven port in the state, only to the Port of Portland.
Is that Kim Pusey's port?
Gary, what's Gary's last name?
I didn't hear.
Port of Morrow, Gary.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Anyway, they have done a tremendous job. They're in Portland, Oregon. They're on the Columbia River. They're not a coastal port, and so all of their port activities is, of course, barge activities and Google and Yahoo and and Cogen and two huge dairies, one which just closed, or is closing for another reason, but it's people don't believe it, but we look at it from our members, and we look at it from the standpoint of what's the size of their property casualty premium. Oh baby, that's a big pork. So.
All right, does anybody have any more questions about the search process? Like I said, I think, Karen, you have your hit list for us to send that to us, and I'll let you guys circulate it amongst the staff or whatever mechanism by which you want to solicit feedback. But I think the question will be is, we will look at our schedules and set up another work session when it's practical, probably within the next, sorry to say, but in the next week or so. We'll establish that meeting, and at that point, Aaron, you'll bring back, or I guess you could bring back the feedback that you've received up to that point. The commission will have their feedback, and then I'm envisioning, actually, again, sorry to talk too much here, but I'm envisioning us, maybe it might be efficient if we were to send comments to Karen, and then prior to the meeting you could circulate a document that had the list of everyone's comments so that we can all see them before we get there, so that we can start speaking to individual items as we go. Does that seem reasonable?
I like the streamlining of the process.
Okay.
Track changes and send them all to Karen.
Yeah, and that way you'll have a bigger document, but at least it'll be a complete set of the comments so that we can effectively put them together. I think at that point in the meeting, in the announcement for the special meet or the work session, I think we'll outline a more formal public comment section. I'm not sure how to work that quite yet, maybe, but I think it's at that point where we would maybe have it a little more open than we typically have, in terms of, instead of just comments at the beginning or the end, maybe it can be a little bit, within reason, a little bit more of an open dialogue with folks that are concerned in the audience, that see the agenda, that want to come and provide some input on, or comments for us to consider.
Those comments actually would be like a meeting packet then.
Mm-hmm. Well, all our comments would be there,
Right.
and then we would evaluate each and every one of our comments, and then we would bring in comments that may come from the public, and then we theoretically could give you enough direction to put together a draft agenda with comments that we've all sort of vetted and taken into consideration.
So that's strictly GM, not pro tem interim?
No, this is just a permanent position.
And so this step of us getting this together, getting to Karen's staff recommendations, would fill in that we ran it through the public.
Yeah, once you have that work session, absolutely.
Right, so
Yeah.
then we.
Because you'll get back, and I would think at the next meeting, a finished product
Right.
that you would then move on and motion, and approve.
Right.
But once they're sent back out again, that should be public.
Yes.
Yeah. Would the comments that we make as a collective go to the public before that meeting, before that special meeting? So they'd have that in front of them for
Because that would have to be an open meeting.
several days before coming in and seeing it
So
for the
that's
first
the
time.
first chance that we will see each other's comments.
Correct.
And then everybody, the public would, because it'd be part of the meeting packet.
Right.
So, I mean, I think you make your comments
So it's a real
with that in mind. Yeah, it's a work
Very
session.
important.
And it's collaborative too. I mean, I think,
Yeah, I love open sessions.
I think if we, within reason, I mean, we can't have the meeting go on for 3.5 hours, but I
But
think
we have.
we don't want that to happen again.
There's a chance for everyone to do their homework that wants to come in and add or subtract or give feedback.
I think that's what we're going for, yeah. And so by putting it out in the meeting packet, we'll give people a chance to paw through it all, and for us to discuss them, but also for the public to bring back comments on those as well. And staff, of course, they're part of that. And then, as George said, we'll move forward with a draft PD that then we could approve at the next regularly scheduled meeting. Or
So
whatever.
is the public going to make comments that goes into the packet, what you're saying?
No, not
They're
yet.
just, we hope will read our comments and come to the meeting prepared.
Yes. At least that's
Generally, the public isn't going to wordsmith your document. They're going to say,
Yeah.
either they're not going to say anything, or they're going to say,
They want, or whatever.
Well, the type, we want to make sure you got somebody that knows about RVing, and by golly, you know, that's what you're going to do.
So we'll establish what that next meeting date is, but again, I'll chat with everybody, or I'll have maybe Karen circulate a doodle for us, but in the next week or two, we'll schedule that work session, so we can keep moving on this, but I want to make sure everybody has time to read it, and go from there. I think in the interest of time here, unless anybody got anything else, maybe we should go to the next.
I said just 2 comments. When you covered, Lauren, maybe have Karen sent a doodle poll for the month of July. That way we know when everybody's available.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was, this is more of a support thing, is if we could consider a comment link or comment email address on our website so people can send a comment in there. And that way, it's kind of like the city has one. If you want to make comments to the city.
Oh, from the public.
From the public. And that way we can vet them that way instead of us getting personal. Everyone's sending us comments or to the general manager.
Well, they could also just, I mean, if they sent you stuff, you could just say, hey, show up at the meeting.
Yeah. But it'd be simple if we have going through the process. We just said, I mean, if you want to make comment here, and it would all go in the same box, and we would have to worry about it.
How practical is it to do that on the website at this point, or is that going to be
If it's not
a production?
If we have like something on the homepage and says, look here for the job description, all that, if you want to send comments, send it to, I can make an email address link there, but it should be like to an existing email. So
That's the only thing I was trying to figure out was who it would be sent to. It seems like it would probably, you know, to me, what I started thinking of is after the fact. It'd be nice if we just had a general one anyway, because right now we have a smattering of input from various locations, but if we can make it a new email address that can be monitored centrally, that would be nice. But I don't know.
It just has to be any email address has to be associated with somebody, like somebody has to be
assigned to it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we should be able to do that, no problem.
Someone like Karen,
Well, we have to recognize too that there's a point at which we just have to stop and move forward with the PD. So I think the public, I mean, we could certainly, if it's simple enough for you guys to post this on the website, it sounds like that's a good idea. But if it's going to turn into a hassle, you know, we're going to engage the public in this very formally. So if you guys can swing that, go for it. If it looks like it's going to turn into or mushroom into something more challenging, then we'll just continue to rely on the public meeting that we'll have.
Well, I guess the question about that is, if we did establish that email address for comments, would that just become part of the meeting packet, like correspondence?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
Would have to be.
You'd have to do it that way. If you wanted them to send comments, then there'd have to be an opportunity.
If the commission is going to look at them, it becomes part of the packet.
Right.
Well, what's your thoughts on this, George? Would you say?
Don't create a blog. That's what I'm sitting here going, do not create a blog.
I was talking about an email site.
Yeah.
Blog,
But the email thing, for them to say, email your comments to Karen, no problem.
And it'll just become part of
It just becomes part of it. But don't, for heaven's sake, don't get a situation where you guys are looking at them.
Oh, no.
Then we're all looking for help.
So you guys have enough direction on that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got creation of that and the doodle poll, and then sending us the PDs on the action list. Okay. George, what you got on our second item?
Okay, the second thing you asked me about, to talk about a little bit about, is what do you do about interim management? The first thing is to turn the question back around to you. Okay, and I mean this as a top one. Aaron and anybody else internally that you may have somebody internal. Aaron may be interested. Others that would be interested in being stepping into the role for 3 to 6 months as we do this recruitment. Okay, that's definitely an option you have available to you. So that's number one. You know, if I'm going to give you a candidate, my first candidate is going to be somebody that already knows you and knows the operation. Because really what you're asking that person to do is keep the doors open. You're not asking them to do any big planning. You're not asking them to do a lot more extra work, but you are asking them to keep the doors open, keep people, your staff working effectively. Okay. If you don't feel strongly that the internal person can do their job and that job, or they can't hire somebody to help them, okay, then we do have 2 or 3 people that are interested in being an interim, and they would be just that. They're management driven people. One of them has port experience, the other 2 do not. One of them has kind of risen to the top with me. My first choice would be somebody internally. I'm just going to say I'll give my first choice because it makes it easy for us and they're familiar with you. Okay? It may not be what's best for Portland. So I reached out to a person that I didn't know this when I reached out to her, but she actually has experience with you. She worked and managed the aquarium here at one time, years ago. She's recently retired from the Portland Metro. She's managed the zoo. She's managed all
That would
different
be a good
levels
fit.
of.
That would be a good fit for us.
Yeah, zoo. Well, I couldn't say that I did not know her, and I got to know her, and I dug into, and this is a fix-it person. This is not only keep your doors open, but she will help staff fix things. She won't come in here and change things necessarily, but if the commission wants a tweak here or a tweak there, she's definitely been a calming influence on the organizations that she's gone in. She fixed the zoo twice, just to give you an example. When they lost their zoo people, okay, and she barely knew what the animals looked like, but she knew how to manage people, and she knew how to manage a budget, and she knew how to manage programs. And when I called her and said, would you be interested? She says, oh my God, you're asking me to spend the summer and fall in Newport? Heck yes. So she's somebody that I would encourage you to take a look at. Whether she's your best choice or not, I have no idea, but she definitely rose to the top with me. Another candidate would be one of your former general managers. He lives in the area. He's still working with ports. He works with Port of Cascade on a part-time basis. And Dawn is more than willing to come back for 3 to 6 months as an interim, part-time interim. So that is an option. Again, these aren't, my role today is to bring you options. Does that make understand? A third option we run across, which may surprise you, but you got to remember my background, is a retired fire chief. He's retired out of fire service. He's managed other types of districts, transportation districts, and again, understands public budgeting, understands how to treat people appropriately, keep your staff, on the same page, knows how to work with a commission or a board, understands the Oregon process, the Oregon government process. So again, strong management skills, strong human resource skills, strong, probably of the three, the strongest budgeting skills. This gentleman, after he retired out of his first career, went to an organization that was basically broke, made a relationship with a retired logger, and got private money to fund the fire district the first 6 months that he was there. Paid it all back 6 months later. When he told me he was doing it, I said, "Kid, there's got to be something illegal about that." And he figured out a way to do it and did it, and it was legal. That was a small little fire district in the coastal range, but it was pretty interesting how that worked. So I have those people. I also had another one, a gentleman that's just getting ready to retire again. Finding people with port experience. Of course, the two best people I have out there right now with port experience both work for you. So we're not, one of them I bring it to you because he was here a long time ago, and the other one I'm not. That's kind of where we're at.
So, will you be able to provide the board the resumes for those three folks, it sounds like, that you mentioned? And, I think as far as a first step here, maybe what we do is we'll take all those things, people can mull them over, decide what they want, and maybe at that next work session meeting that we're talking about, we can make a decision on whether there's a viable candidate in the three you've provided, or if we want you to go back to the drawing board and come up with a few more. But theoretically, we could make a decision either way at our next work session for an interim manager.
And just so you know, I didn't stop with these three. I actually did contact two other people. One of them is a person that's done a lot of city manager work. The city manager has some parallels to your position, and he's just not available. So I did reach out to one other person.
Well, it sounds like there's some 3 interesting choices. How does everybody else feel about that? Go in that direction? Get the resumes, mull them over.
So then we'd be basically decide, hopefully in the interim, and have our job description for the GM for the next meeting.
Yeah, so that's where I think that work session can be a dual purpose, where we'll be able to provide you direction one way or the other on an interim, as well as we'll go through the process of continuing to evaluate our PDs and go from there.
So the public wouldn't necessarily be as involved in the interim.
No, your interim, that's why I say it's important for your staff and really for the operations that there be some continuity and some consistency. That can be as simple as you turn into somebody and saying, look, what do we need to do to have you do it, and what support do you need? And then have them hire administrative assistants or something to help you, okay? Or you turn to one of these people and go, how soon could you be here?
Right. What about their pay?
Pardon me?
How does, we would have to decide.
Their pay is commensurate with what you would pay your general manager, okay? But remember that you don't have any benefits. You don't have any retirement that you pay. So sometimes even the interims get paid a little more because there's savings on the other side. And they have to, in all 3 of these cases, well, 2 of the cases, they'd have to do some kind of relocation. But then it comes down also, do you need them 5 days a week, 7 days a week, 4 days a week? What is because the job's a little bit different than the job description you're going to develop, the interim one is. It's, if we bring somebody outside, it's somebody that can help Aaron make operational decisions when he needs help Karen make administrative decisions when she needs help, not tell them how to do their job.
What's a reasonable time frame for us to make a decision with one of those 3, someone that we haven't found yet, or go back to internal staff and decide that we might want to go with the interim and then backfill with some administrative help? So is that a 2-week window, a 3-week window?
I think you have a 2-week to a month window.
Right.
Otherwise, you start getting in a situation where, and Aaron, I'm sorry, you and I haven't talked about this, but he's yelling uncle. You got to do something. We're sinking here.
We want to make sure we're able to continue more operations in the summertime when there's good weather and keep those projects going as much as possible and free up the staff to be able to do their jobs and not get bogged down. So I think, 2 weeks might not be reasonable, but 3 weeks should be, right? I hope not too much more than a month for interim.
For how long we would have an interim?
No, how long until we make a decision who that person might be, or if we're going to go inside, or...
I think the board really, we need to move on this.
Yeah.
I think at our next work session, whenever we get that scheduled, I don't see any reason why this board can't be in a position to either pick one of those 3 or go back and say,
Yes,
hey,
Stuart,
it's time to go to another
what
one.
I would recommend is you look at these and consider your interim. 2 weeks from now, you invite 1 or 2 of these people, or 3 all, to for interviews, and you sit down with them.
Okay.
And then you make a decision on which one you want.
Okay.
And talk to them. Now, you may screen 1 or 2 of them out right here and say, I look at these, and really, I only want to interview this person.
So we bring them down at our next work.
Well,
So then we're just trying to think about how many meetings we're.
But you don't want to just hire off paper. You want to make sure that you talk to them,
Absolutely.
That's why we bring you one of them. Oh, I can just bring you one name out of the person in here today. And said, here it is.
So everybody on the same page with that, then I guess we're talking about, we are going to have a few more meetings in our future for sure.
So one of the 3 people, are they any of them limited to amount of time they can work? Whether they're PERS employees, if they're already retired? Because I know that might come in.
These are all PERS retirees.
So
They're all available.
So they're all,
But see,
but they can only work so many hours.
But you're perfect.
Right.
They can work full time. All of July, starting in July, they can work full time December, and then they can start working full time in January until June. So you have a year.
Okay.
But you can't. You got to be careful. You can't expect them to be here.
Right.
40 hours a week because it'll bite you both of them.
Right.
Bite the district and bite them.
No, I just make sure everyone.
But as far as getting an interim in here for 3, 6, 9 to 12 months. You're doing this at the perfect time.
Okay.
Can these interviews, do they need to be open sessions with the public?
Oh, there's no way around it.
Right, okay, just clarifying that.
No,
Any-
because you haven't done the process that you're going to do with your permanent hiring, there's no way to get around it.
Sure, that's fine, that's
Yeah.
just clarification.
No. Now, I walked you through the process that allow you to do your interviews for the general manager.
Right.
Okay,
Got
yeah.
that part.
George, is there, just real quick, is there a difference between hiring and appointing in terms of the eyes of hiring or HR laws?
Not at the CEO level.
I was just thinking about, well, because you're bringing these things to us, so essentially you did the search for
I did
us,
the
our
search.
and these are the qualified applicants,
Right.
if you will. So we're already at that.
We're recommending you appoint
Okay.
either internal,
Okay.
which we're not aware of, we stayed out of that, or one of these. And if none of these meet your criteria, we'll go back to the drawing board. Now, I'm going to give you resumes. These resumes have not been redacted. Okay, these candidates know that I'm going to be here today. Okay, but please hold them close to your chest. If somebody was to approach you, I mean, I'm talking about the press, you can't really, I mean, you can tell them, but don't give them the resume.
So that's my question as far as this meeting is concerned, and the minutes, and what documents were referred to. Don't I have to include those?
The only problem is that these resumes, I have not looked at them from a redaction standpoint. Meaning, what if they have their social security number on there? I don't think they do, but there's things that are not public that could be on these resumes. For example, their home address is not public.
I know, but I'm just
Hey,
thinking,
George.
you're handing them out at this meeting.
George,
for documents.
could you redact them and send them to him, send them to Karen, she get it straight from this afternoon, so we don't
No, I
have to
didn't
worry
have to do
about
that.
Okay.
Karen just had the answer. Karen just subtly gave me the answer. You will have them.
Okay.
Because you're not going to have them right now.
That sounds good. Is everybody on the same page here?
Yeah. Good?
So Karen, your minutes just simply say the resume will be made available to the commissioners.
Correct.
I don't want to be responsible for anybody's personal information.
Well, and to be dumb me, I'm driving down here going, oh man, I didn't look at those resumes to see if what was on there. I'm sitting here thinking about what's on them and being able to.
Well, and on a positive note, before we jump into the last one here, I mean, I appreciate what you brought to us, George, and I think it sounds like just from your sort of cursory explanation, there may be some, they all sound like viable candidates for us to take a look at, so appreciate that.
So we would whittle them down strictly in an open session, not prior to.
No, you would tell somehow through a straw poll with Karen or some, without violating public media directives, you'd let Karen know or Karen, hey, tell George we want to, it appears by consensus the commission wants to interview these two people.
Oh, okay.
Or can you have
all
one
three.
person?
Huh?
Could you have one,
Sure.
2, or 3?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
Again,
meeting's long
I
as-
don't want to steer you in one direction, but even though I know the other two people much better, you need to interview that lady. Whether you go internally, you need to interview her. I was shocked when I talked to her about what she knew. Positive. I don't mean that negative. I mean that very.
And she still wants the job.
Can you share her name?
Quiet down.
Can you share her name at this point?
Her name is Terry Dressler. Dresler. Her last name may have been different when she was here. I have no idea what that was.
She's fine with knowing that.
Jim from your building,
No, it doesn't. I worked at the aquarium
I
here
know that.
for
That's why I
22
asked.
years.
Were you thinking of a name that started with a
Maybe.
path?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, anybody have any more questions about the process so far? So we'll get these resumes, it sounds like, from Karen once they've been, George sends them to her. And then we'll take a peek at them. And then I suppose the next item or the next part of the process would be to send recommendations to Karen, I guess, would that be a ranking, George, or do you have any recommendations on?
Is you just let Jeff, if I can pick on you. Jeff just sends an email to Karen. Karen, I'm interested in interviewing all three. Or Karen, I'm interested in interviewing ABC. She just does a tally and lets you know, hey, 5 of the commissioners say we interview this person, 4 of them say interview this person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to get you through it.
Okay.
Quickly through it.
And would that, I think where Sarah was going, so would that count as essentially a vote, though?
No, because you're just trying to, I mean, you can send it to me. I mean, you're just trying to get it screened out so I know who to invite you.
Yeah.
You know, you're not really picking one. You're just, you know.
Okay.
Or you could interview 3 of them and then a general person. I mean, you know, that's the cleanest way to do it.
So we're basically telling Karen who of the 3, like I would say, whatever of the 3 I want interviewed.
Yeah,
Okay.
be honest with you. I mean, I'm just, if there's really no reason not to invite somebody unless it didn't hit any of your list. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
they're only going to do 15-minute, 20-minute interviews.
Yeah.
Is what we're talking about here, just get them all 3 here?
I don't know.
Most likely, let's look at it first.
Okay. All right. So let's keep going with the process, like you say. That makes the most sense. I didn't mean to expedite it. Send your sort of comments to Karen to concatenate who the commissioners would like to interview, and then Karen, you can circulate that back to George and the commission. Does that make sense? On how, you know, I don't know how I'm envisioning this. So, like, if I say, oh, I only want to do 1, and Sarah says I want to do 2, and Jim says I want to do 3, how do we, where do we go from that?
Probably only eliminate 1 person if none of us pick them.
Right.
That only takes a minute for Karen. It's like, okay, no one wants number 3, let's not bother.
Not bother. Or only 2 want number. You know, I mean, or only 1 person wants number 3 or number 1. You see what I mean?
Okay.
But if 3 or 4 of you want anybody, then bring them. I mean, again, you're not talking about spending an hour with people.
So Karen can flush it out. Yeah. Okay.
You have to let me, because what I can't do is take you sending me the comments and then me sending.
No, you're not
comments back to you.
you're not sending them back.
Yeah.
We're sending you yes or no's, I think.
Yeah.
They're just going to have a list of 3 or 4 names. They're going to say yes, yes, no, no. And you're going to go, okay.
Right.
And then you can call me and I can help you with it. I mean, it's, yeah.
Just to make sure it's.
No.
That makes sense to me. Is everybody cool with that?
does make
Like I
sense.
said, you already gave me 1 answer.
So,
All right.
okay, but so you aren't going to send us anything back, or are you going to send the tally back?
No, she's not going to send a tally. She's going to send you a schedule for your next meeting that says, George Dunkel's going to be here, you're going to interview him at 1, you're Sam Smith at 2, or 1 and 1:15 and 1:30, or whatever it is.
Got it.
Then you'll know.
And as far as interview go, I hate to keep going here, but could we just simply ask each of the candidates to make a presentation?
Yep.
And then we could ask questions based on that,
On that
kind of a deal. So we don't necessarily have to sit here with a whole raft and have a standard list of questions at that stage for this.
I would prep them for you. I would say, look, I've been there, here's the deal.
Okay.
Google up Portland. They need an interim manager. You know?
Okay.
And I guess the one thing I would need from you, this is going to come to my next question, is what is your timeline? You know, do you want to get a permanent manager in here by the first of the year? Are you not worried about that? You get a good interim, you're willing to go 9 months before we get one in here? Or you want to get in here in 3 months? See what I mean? And that's something you need to kick around. You don't have to give me an answer right now, but you're going to need to give me that answer because I need to come up. If you approve my agreement, I need to come up with a schedule for you that's going to be, I've got to get 5 of you and that's got to work, you know.
Okay.
What about staff being involved? And I'm really happy to hear that in this process, staff is as valuable as they are in this process as they are on a daily basis. With this interim thing, would they also weigh in, or?
You know, I don't, again, I'm not trying to downplay staff.
Yeah, this is just.
This is somebody to keep the door open. This guy's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, if they came in here and pooped in the middle of the floor from staff, yeah, we want to know that. You know? Pardon me.
This thing is, it is on.
An HR violation.
Him and I had quite a conversation about that.
There's
All right.
Bringing it back.
In the interest of your time, okay, I'm not sure how long you're scheduled here, but you asked me to talk to you a little bit about what are some of the things.
Are we all done with this? Just so everybody's.
I'm good with everything.
I just want to make sure we got a clean break to go to topic number 2. Action items. You know, Karen, we're going to send you those. You're going to send us the resumes. We'll send you back the yes or no's. You'll send them to George, and then George will say, "Hey, Karen, here's what you put on your agenda. Do you need?" And for the next one,
I should be sending out the resumes.
whatever you guys work out. But that's where we're at with the interim GM
And then the
position
doodle poll.
and the doodle poll. Yeah.
And the job description.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we got so far. Okay. Thanks, George.
We're good.
Next one.
Okay, the third thing. What are the services that we have available to you or that maybe you need as a commission to kind of, and again, I'm going to be frank about one thing here. I think one thing this commission needs to do is they need to get on the same page. That doesn't mean you have to agree on everything. That doesn't mean everything has to be a 5-0 vote. But you got to get on the same page. What's the vision for this port? Okay, we can help you get there if you're willing to do the work. There's just some ways you need to go about that. You have some things in place. You have a thing called where to go here? A port facility plan. You have a strategic business plan. And you have a capital facilities plan. I have no idea when those things were developed. Okay, you need to sit down at the port with your staff and go through those things. We can facilitate that for you. You need to do some priority planning, and I actually think you need to do that right away. You know, you need to dedicate a Saturday morning, a Monday morning, to something, 2 or 3 hours, where we need some prep time. And Aaron, I'm not making work for you, but you know, we need some prep time. But you need to. Who the heck are we, and where are we going? You know, and then once you kind of get your handle on it, then you present that to the public. This is who we think we are. This is where we think we're going. What's your thoughts? Okay. So we call that priority planning. It's not a big strategic plan. It's taking what you have and updating it. And you may look at something in some of these plans, and again, this is not a criticism. I'm just saying you got to list it in your website. You know, you may look at it and go, "What in the heck is that?" See what I mean? I don't know that. You might. I don't. So that's one thing. We'd be glad to help you with that. And that is a cost-only price for us. You know, if we had to send a facilitator down here, whatever the cost of this facilitator to be here for the day, maybe $300 or $400. You know, you got to pay the cost. I'm sorry, I mean, it's not. We don't make a profit on it, but we just got to cover the cost. We have and I thought you guys did this, we have a board practice assessment program where a facilitator comes in and spends about 90 minutes with the commission.
A board what?
Board practices assessment.
Board practices.
That was the fellow who showed up and offered it, and we kind of,
Did you? And that's fine.
Yeah.
You
We
know,
did that 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
but
Anyway, you're not ready for that today, but it is something over the course of the next 9 months to 12 months you're going to want to do. Because what that does is that helps the commissioners understand what staff's sharing with them, and maybe what staff isn't sharing with them. That's not a criticism. That's just some surprises sometimes come out of an assessment. I did one with Port of Tillamook, and you know they love their general manager. They get along. They move it forward. I mean, they do some of the darndest things down there. They process poop, you know, cattle. I mean, they got some neat programs going on the port. And there was some of the commissioners said, "We do what?" I mean, they didn't understand what that process was. They heard the term, but they didn't understand what it really was. And so it really helped them understand what are the services they're providing. And in Tillamook County, dairy, it's a big deal. And the port's a big part of it. Anyway, that's another thing. So those are the 2 things that I would recommend to you over the course of the next few months. First, the priority planning, that we use that as but that's going to be a workshop. That's going to be you're going to roll your sleeves up and go to work.
Well, it would seem to me like that's an important point of recruiting a new GM, a permanent GM, so that they can see where we're at.
Exactly.
We've got to have
In
our
one direction.
a little bit more formalized at that point. So it seems like those two would go hand in hand.
And depending on which direction you go with the interim, you may have an interim that can really help you with that. I would pledge to you, as long as you schedule it around my schedule, but I would love to participate in that with you. Because you have to be one of the ports that I use. So I have a vested interest in you. I love coming to Newport. So,
Well, how do we go about if the commission felt like we wanted to continue down the idea of the priority planning that you recommended? What would be the next step?
well, the next step would be do the things you already talked about doing. The job description, get an interim, whatever direction you go, get that done. And then we'll put, if I'm reading the tea leaves here and seeing a lot of heads nodding, that's all I need. I'll put some drafts up together and get it to you for a future meeting in the next, let's just say next 2 months.
Was that something that the board feels would be a good idea for us to pursue?
Yeah.
All right.
And for staff, just so you understand what that is, that's not creating new stuff. That's taking what you have and refreshing it. It's looking at what you have. And in that, you may find that this is way out of date. You need changes. But you don't need to change it tomorrow. You can change it a year, 6 months from now. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So, George, you've got 5 head nods here on
Okay,
that.
good.
So,
Well, my last thing is I just wanted to share with you what we produced for the Port of Morrow. This is not for you to ooh and ah over or anything. I just wanted you to see. We'll do something like that for you when we get to that, once you're done with some of your things. And that is you had a one-page one before, and yours may be a one-page. But that particular thing online, available online, it's stapled together, but really don't pass it out much. But online, it was viewed a lot. And we ended up with 27 viable candidates for that position.
great. In a practical sense, one of the things we didn't talk about early on is what sort of formality do we need in terms of a contract to engage your...
It's a simple 3-paragraph thing. I prepared it for you. You just at your next meeting, approve it.
And this is to manage the search.
That's to manage the search.
Okay. So we can do that at our next work session so people can think about it, what George has said. This one here, there's a contract on the back page.
Now, let me explain that to you. Why are we cheap? If you were to bring a search firm in here, I know we've worked with Richard in the past, and there are other firms out there, headhunting firms, that charge a lot more. They charge a percentage of the salary, generally. Okay? Why we put a not-to-exceed number together is we're really not doing your search. You are. We're assisting you. We're utilizing some of your staff time, we're utilizing some of your time, meaning on the phone and email. We're asking you to provide us with some stuff. We're not sending a full-time person down here to do that, because we really are a member services program. Does that make sense? Now, do we take the lead? Do we keep you out of jail? Absolutely. And provide you with all the access to things. But there could be an ad. Let's say that you decided to do a $400 ad in a national publication. That'll be on top of that, because you'll pay for that. Because we're not a member, you are. We can't make the ad.
But you'd vet the ad and make sure that they were all squared away and all that stuff.
We'd work with whoever.
So no action on this at this point. At
I
our
don't
next
think
work
it's
session, we can make a determination if this is the direction.
I wasn't sure how you would agendize this, so it doesn't have to, I have no problem. If I got head nods, I'm going to start putting a schedule together, because here's the little bit of the problem you're running into. I do want you to think about this, and you don't need to talk about it now, but I do want you to think about when do you want to see that permanent general manager here? What's the date? Is it 3 months, 9 months, 6 months, 12 months? Because that is I get that date and I work backwards. But I don't need it today. I got enough.
now that we've learned more from after the beginning of the meeting, if we were to get an interim within, without, whatever, it almost seems like we'd want, are we ready to have a final job description first?
No, you don't need that. The interim may help you develop that job.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't necessarily be an agenda, or a discussion certainly, but it wouldn't be our final.
Well, and I think what we would do is, I mean, because we would still have to have follow-up because we would get comments back from the public. You know, we would debate our own thing, and then still Karen would have to put all that stuff together, and then give it to us again. You know, I mean, there's
Yeah, because I don't want to rush any part of this.
yeah.
Well, you need the right person, but it would be nice to have that person.
Well, I mean, to your point, I think the key, and from my perspective, from when I've hired people, the key is the more time you put into the position description, the better candidates you're going to get because you're more focused in what it is you really want in some ways. And it's going to be, and there's some other aspects of it that are important too, as minimum and preferred qualifications help us to, with an applicant pool so that we don't get too broad of a spectrum of people that might be able to participate in it,
Right, we had
but really would.
baristas applying
Yeah,
the last one.
yeah. So it's,
Why would a barista apply on
but it's when we draw that line, I think that's really important. So it is an important component. But again, I think we have a process. We still need to start that work session, so I want to keep that moving.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I
in
want to keep
terms-
moving. Then maybe we should also do an item of consensus, or I don't know how long each of us think it should be for the search. I of course would say until we find someone good, George. But
Until the position's filled.
yeah, so could that be part of what we send into Karen too, an initial thought, or I don't know. That's just something that can be talked about.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly had that discussion at the work session. I mean, I think the next work session is going to be a very collaborative feel to it, to be honest with you, in terms of feedback as well as us just throwing things on the table.
Well, just so you're aware, full disclosure, there will be at least one other consultant assigned to help me besides me. And the reason being is twofold. One, we have a guy that lives in Seal Rock. That's makes it handy. It's 20 minutes away. Number two is I'm going on an extended trip December 16th through the September 18th. My wife and I are taking a land trip to watch football games in the Midwest. It's kind of a bucket list thing for me, and she says, we better do it, so we're going.
Great.
From when to when?
I'm leaving the evening of the 16th of August. My first game is September 1st in Columbus.
Go Buckeyes.
Go Badgers.
It's going to be a massacre, but I'm going to be there. And we'll end up in Reno on the 15th of September to watch a game there. We'll also see a game. We'll see 3 games. We're not sure what the second game is going to be yet, but it might be Notre Dame. Just depending on where they're at. But anyway, so I'll be gone, but I'm going to have my email access. I'll have my telephone and all that stuff.
All right. Does anybody have any thoughts on the 3 things? Any more thoughts on the 3 things George presented? So it sounds like we got a path forward. You'll be interfacing a bit with Karen. Okay. The next item on the agenda is our public comment section. Does the public have anything they wish to say?
I was looking at this.
State your name first.
Hi, my name's Demar Goble, City Council. So this looks like this is another search person other than the last one I was used, right? For the search.
Different.
And is this a membership? Did I hear this?
They're a member of Special District Association of Oregon.
Because I thought your contract was extremely generous.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I could do it for that.
Well, that's why I clarified the way I did. We're not cheap. We do good work, but we just have to cover our costs.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was extremely generous. I don't know anybody that's charging $50 an hour as a professional.
My wife has the same complaint.
The other question I had, when you go through this process and a person rises to the top, a number one choice. Will you select that person this time? Or
Which
will
process are you talking about? Interim or permanent?
No, the GM process.
Permanent.
The permanent process. When you go through that process and a person rises to the top, will you hire that person then, or will you, because that wasn't what happened last time, and I was just curious whether that would be the process.
How it works, the panels that they put together really screen down to no less than 2. Okay? And the commission can choose to just interview those 2, or they can interview all 5. Okay? The final decision is always made by the commission. But we run through a consensus process, and they get to hear all that, I call it data. So they get to hear all that input. But the one thing we have to avoid is, and we do this when we meet with the evaluators. You two could be evaluators. I mean, that's the kind of people we like to see there. People that are interested in the port. Okay? But when we meet with the evaluators and we organize them, brief them on what their roles are, we make it very clear to them that they don't make the final decision. The final decision is made by the commissioners.
Right, so if the last 2 candidates, they could then hire either one of those.
Absolutely.
If they want.
Because something could pop up that the other groups would never know about. The background check or something.
You would think that the background check would be presented to the selection committee, though.
Yeah, that's we're so.
In other words, how would the selection committee rank the person then? Or is that something that isn't produced? Isn't given to the committee?
The commission sees it.
But not the committee.
Not necessarily. Well, if they put a hiring committee together, that hiring committee would see it. But if it was just the interview panels, they would not. But again, there's information on there that may not be public.
Okay.
All right. One more comment.
Yale 40 LW. I would urge you, I've heard a lot of comments about not being in a hurry, which I agree with, but I also don't want to see this drag out for 8-9 months like it did before. The port desperately needs leadership, and it needs good leadership. And so I would urge you guys to, and it sounds like the conversation's going that way, is to expedite it as quickly as possible and still do a sound job. I look forward to the new different process. I've been a part of the SDAO before. I think they're a great organization through the Rural Fire Protection District here.
Which district?
Newport Rural Fire.
Oh, good.
And so, I have a lot of confidence in their ability, and they do a great job. So I think with their guidance, I would recommend that you do sign a contract with them and move forward and not delay searching for a search team group and that kind of thing. I think they can give you the guidance you need to find that candidate. And so, I urge you to work as diligently and quickly as you can. And, as far as the number, personally from the public, I would think that a 6-month window should be adequate in order to find a good quality candidate. Thanks.
All right. I think that's all. At this point, I'm going to close the Port of Newport Commission work session at 1:24.